cold night and a warm gesture, Jameson Blake pulled his black Mercedes to a stop at the red light. The streets of Chicago were nearly empty at this hour, just past midnight. Most people were home, safe and warm. Jameson should have been too, but he had stayed late at the office again. Work was the only thing that made sense to him anymore. As he waited for the light to change, something caught his eye. Across the street at a lonely bus stop, a young woman sat curled up on the bench. Even from this distance, Jameson could see she was shivering. Her thin jacket was no match for the bitter November wind. He should have driven away. That was what the old Jameson would have done. Mind your own business. Stay focused. Do not get involved. But something made him park the car and walk across the street. The sleeping stranger, the woman, was asleep now, her head resting against the cold metal armrest of the bench. Her brown hair fell across her face, and her hands clutched a stack of papers. Jameson could see they were resumes, all wrinkled and worn from being carried around all day. She looked exhausted, not just tired from one long day, but the kind of exhaustion that comes from fighting too hard for too long. Jameson recognized that look. He had seen it in his own mirror years ago, before success had made his life easier. Without thinking too much about it, Jameson took off his wool coat. It was expensive, custom-made, the kind of thing most people could not afford even if they saved for months. He draped it gently over her shoulders. The woman stirred slightly, but did not wake up. Her breathing was shallow and quick. Like even in sleep, she could not fully rest. Jameson noticed the resumes starting to slip from her hands. He carefully placed them back, making sure they would not fall. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something he had carried for over 20 years. The pocket watch. It was an old silver pocket watch with intricate designs carved into the metal. The watch did not even work anymore, but Jameson had never been able to throw it away. It was the only thing he had from before his adoption, from his time at the orphanage. Why was he giving it to a stranger? Jameson could not explain it, even to himself. But something about this woman made him want to leave a part of himself with her. Maybe she would keep it safe. Maybe it would bring her luck. He placed the watch gently on the bench beside her, then stepped back. For a long moment, Jameson just stood there in the cold, watching her sleep. His heart was beating faster than normal, and he felt something he had not felt in years. Hope? Curiosity? Connection. Jameson shook his head and walked back to his car. This was foolish. She was just a homeless woman at a bus stop. He would never see her again. Tomorrow, this would all seem like a strange dream. But as he drove away, Jameson kept looking in the rearview mirror until the bus stop disappeared from view. Ruby wakes. Up the loud hiss of air brakes startled Ruby awake. She jumped up so fast she nearly fell off the bench. Her heart was racing as she tried to remember where. She was the bus stop, right? She had been waiting for the last bus after another day of job hunting. 12 interviews in 2 weeks and 12 rejections. Her savings were almost gone, and her roommate Grace had been more than patient about the rent. But something was different. Ruby was not cold anymore. She looked down and gasped. A heavy coat was wrapped around her shoulders. It was the softest, warmest thing she had ever felt. "What in the world?" Ruby whispered, touching the fine fabric. This coat probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. Who would leave something so valuable with a stranger? Then she saw it. Next to her on the bench was a silver pocket watch, gleaming under the streetlight. Ruby picked it up with trembling hands. The metal was cool and smooth, and when she opened it, she saw the inside was engraved with words she could barely read in the dim light. The bus driver honked impatiently. "You getting on or what, lady?" Ruby grabbed her resumes and the mysterious gifts and hurried on to the bus. She paid her fare with the last few coins in her pocket and found a seat by the window. As the bus rumbled through the empty streets, Ruby could not stop staring at the pocket watch. There was something familiar about it. The weight of it in her hand, the pattern on the cover, even the small dent on one side. It was like holding a memory she could not quite reach. A new beginning 3 days later. Ruby stood in front of Blake Industries, wearing her best interview outfit and clutching an application form. The building was enormous, all glass and steel, reaching up into the cloudy sky. This was her last chance. If she did not get hired soon, she would have to leave Chicago. The job was not glamorous. Night janitor, cleaning offices after everyone went home. But it paid decent money, and right now, Ruby needed any job she could get. The interview with the hiring manager, Patricia Winters, was short and professional. Patricia was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "Can you start tonight?" Patricia asked. Ruby nodded so enthusiastically she almost dropped her folder. "Yes, absolutely. I can start right now if you need me to." Patricia smiled. "Tonight is fine. Be here at 9 o'clock. Someone will show you around and explain your duties. Welcome to Blake Industries, Ruby." That evening, Ruby arrived early, nervous but excited. She wore the simple blue uniform they had given her and pulled her hair back into a practical ponytail. A security guard named Tom showed her where the cleaning supplies were kept and explained which floors she would be responsible for. "Mostly you will be on the executive floors," Tom said. 25 through 30. "Not many people work this late, but you might run into a few workaholics. Just do your job and stay out of their way." Ruby nodded, taking mental notes of everything. She could do this. It was just cleaning. How hard could it be? The man in the hallway around 11 o'clock, Ruby was pushing her cleaning cart down the 27th floor hallway. The building was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning and the squeak of her cartwheels. She had just finished cleaning 3 offices and was feeling pretty good about her. First night, that was when she saw him. A tall man stood at the end of the hallway, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city lights below. He wore an expensive suit, and even from behind, Ruby could tell he was someone important. The way he stood, the confidence in his posture, everything about him screamed power. Ruby tried to be quiet as she pushed her cart past him. But the squeaky wheel betrayed her. The man turned around, and Ruby found herself looking into the most intense eyes she had ever seen. They were dark and thoughtful, like he was always thinking about 10 things at once. "Sorry to disturb you," Ruby said quickly. "I am just cleaning. I will be out of your way in a minute." The man studied her for a long moment, and Ruby felt her cheeks getting hot. There was something about the way he looked at her, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "You are new," he said. It was not a question.
"First night," Ruby admitted.
"Still figuring out where everything is." "I am Ruby, by the way. Ruby Collins." "James," the man said after a brief pause. "I work here too." Ruby relaxed a little. At least he was friendly. "Nice to meet you, James. What department are you in?" "Management," he said vaguely. "I handle various operations." "What about you? Is this your first cleaning job?" "First official one," Ruby said, leaning against her cart. "I have cleaned plenty of places before, just not for money. Foster homes, shelters, that kind of thing. You learn to be useful wherever you are." Something flickered in James's eyes. "Foster homes. Yeah, I grew up in the system," Ruby said casually. She had learned long ago not to be ashamed of her past. "Bounced around a lot until I aged out at 18. But hey, it taught me to be independent, right?" James was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it changed his whole face. "Independence is valuable." They talked for another 20 minutes, standing in that empty hallway. James asked about her life, her dreams, what brought her to Chicago. Ruby found herself opening up in a way she rarely did with strangers. There was something easy about talking to him, like they had known each other much longer than 20 minutes. "I should let you get back to work," James finally said. "But, Ruby, it was nice meeting you." "You too, James," Ruby said, smiling. "Maybe I will see you around." "Maybe you will," he said. And there was something in his voice that made Ruby think he meant it. As she watched him walk away toward the elevators, Ruby felt her heart beating a little faster. She shook her head and laughed at herself. This was ridiculous. She had just met the man. But still, there was something about James that felt right. Like finding a missing piece you did not know you were looking for. What Ruby did not know was that James was not just another employee. His full name was Jameson Blake, and he owned every single floor of the building she was cleaning. And what Jameson did not know was that the young woman pushing the cleaning cart was the same person he had left his coat with 3 nights ago, but soon. Both of them would discover that some connections run deeper than chance encounters. Some bonds are written in the past, waiting patiently to be remembered. Late-night conversations over the next 2 weeks. Ruby found herself looking forward to her night shifts in a way she never expected. It was not just about the paycheck anymore. Every night around 11, James would appear on one of the floors she was cleaning. They would talk. Sometimes they talked for just a few minutes. Other times, they would sit in the empty break room for over an hour, losing track of time completely. James told her about growing up in a wealthy family that had high expectations. Ruby shared stories about learning to survive in a world that often forgot about kids like her. "You know what I miss most?" Ruby said one night as they sat across from each other at a small table. "Piano music. There was this old piano at one of the group homes I stayed at. A volunteer named Mrs. Henderson taught me how to play. She said music could heal parts of you that words could not reach." James leaned forward, suddenly more interested. "You play piano?" "Used to," Ruby said with a sad smile. "Have not touched one in years. Cannot exactly afford lessons or an instrument on a janitor's salary." "There is a piano here," James said. "In the employee lounge on the 21st floor. No one ever uses it. You should play sometime," Ruby laughed. "I do not think the CEO would appreciate the cleaning lady taking piano breaks." If only she knew, Jameson thought. But he just smiled and said, "I think he would understand." The music room discovery the next night. Curiosity got the better of Ruby. After finishing her cleaning rounds early, she took the elevator down to the 21st floor. The employee lounge was dark and empty, just like James had said. And there, in the corner, sat an old, upright piano. Ruby approached it slowly, almost afraid to touch it. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment before finally pressing down. The sound that came out was slightly out of tune, but it was beautiful. She started playing a melody she had learned as a child. It was a simple tune, but it carried so much emotion. Ruby closed her eyes and let the music flow through her. For those few minutes, she was not a struggling janitor worried about making rent. She was just Ruby, playing music because it made her soul feel alive. That is beautiful. Ruby jumped, her hands crashing down on the keys in a terrible chord. She spun around to find James standing in the doorway, watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "You scared me half to death," Ruby said, pressing a hand to her racing heart. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough to know you have real talent," James said, walking into the room. "Where did you learn that song?" "Mrs. Henderson taught it to me," Ruby said. "She said it was an old lullaby from Europe. Something about lost loves finding their way back to each other." She laughed. "Pretty romantic for a 9-year-old to learn, right?" Jameson felt something shift in his chest. That melody. He knew it. He had known it his whole life, but he could not remember where from. "Play it again," he said softly. Ruby turned back to the piano and played the melody once more, this time with more confidence. Jameson moved closer, and when she finished, he reached past her and played a harmony line that fit perfectly with her melody. "How did you know that part?" Ruby asked, amazed. "I do not know," Jameson admitted. "My fingers just knew where to go." They sat together at the piano bench, playing the song over and over, adding layers and variations. It felt natural, like they had done this 1,000 times before. When they finally stopped, Ruby was smiling so wide her cheeks hurt. "We make a pretty good team," she said. "The best," Jameson agreed. And he meant it. Daniel Foster returns. Everything changed on a rainy Thursday evening. Ruby was restocking paper towels in the 28th floor bathroom when she heard voices in the hallway. One of them made her freeze. "I am telling you, Patricia, I knew a Ruby Collins years ago. If this is the same person, we grew up together." Ruby stepped out of the bathroom and came face to face with a man she had not seen in over 10 years. Daniel Foster looked different now, taller and more polished, but his smile was exactly the same. "Ruby," Daniel said, his face lighting up. "Ruby Collins? I cannot believe it is really you." "Daniel," Ruby said, genuinely happy to see a familiar face. "What are you doing here?" "I just got hired as a financial consultant," Daniel explained, pulling her into a hug. "Started this week. But more importantly, what are you doing here? Last I heard, you were trying to get into music school." "Life happened," Ruby said with a shrug. "Music school is expensive. Cleaning offices pays the bills. Patricia Winters, who had been watching this reunion with interest, smiled warmly. You two know each other? We were in the same foster home for 3 years, Daniel explained. Ruby was like a little sister to me. Always getting into trouble for sneaking into the music room after curfew. They talked for a few more minutes before Patricia excused herself and Daniel had to get to a meeting. But he made Ruby promise to have lunch with him soon so they could catch up properly. Same old Ruby, Daniel said as he left. Still chasing dreams even when life makes it hard. I always admired that about you. Ruby was still smiling when she went back to her cleaning cart. It felt good to be remembered, to have someone from her past who actually cared about what happened to her. What she did not see was James standing at the end of the hallway, watching the entire interaction with a frown on his face. Jealousy and truth. Jameson could not explain the feeling growing in his chest as he watched Ruby laugh with Daniel Foster. It was ugly and uncomfortable, and it took him a moment to recognize it as jealousy. He had no right to feel this way. Ruby was free to have friends, to hug whoever she wanted. But the ease between them, the shared history, the way Daniel looked at her, like she was something precious. It all made Jameson feel like an outsider that night. When Ruby came to the break room expecting their usual conversation, Jameson was cold and distant. Everything okay, James? Ruby asked, noticing his mood immediately. Fine, he said shortly. Just busy. Lots of work. Ruby frowned. Did I do something wrong? No, Jameson said, then sighed. I saw you with that man earlier. Daniel Foster, Ruby said, understanding dawning. We grew up together. He is like a brother to me. It was nice to see a familiar face. He looked at you like more than a sister, Jameson muttered before he could stop himself. Ruby sat down across from him, a small smile playing on her lips. James, are you jealous? I do not get jealous, Jameson said automatically, then paused. Maybe a little. You do not need to be, Ruby said softly. Daniel is my past. Someone I care about, sure, but not like that. He is not the person I rush to work every night hoping to see. Jameson looked up, meeting her eyes. You rush to work hoping to see me? Every single night, Ruby admitted. I know we have not known each other long, but James, you make me feel like I matter. Like I am more than just someone who cleans up after important people. Jameson reached across the table and took her hand. You are so much more, Ruby. You are smart and talented and kind. You light up every room you walk into. Ruby squeezed his hand, feeling warmth spread through her chest. So, are we okay? We are better than okay, Jameson said. They sat there in comfortable silence, hands linked across the table, neither wanting to let go. The devastating discovery a week later. Ruby arrived at work to find the building buzzing with unusual activity. There were photographers in the lobby, and people in expensive suits were everywhere. What is going on? Ruby asked Tom, the security guard. Big shareholder meeting, Tom explained. The CEO is presenting the quarterly results. Always a huge deal when Mr. Blake makes an appearance. Ruby asked casually. I have been working here almost a month and I still have not seen him. Not surprising, Tom laughed. He keeps to the top floor mostly. But he is supposed to give a speech in the main conference room in about 20 minutes. You might catch a glimpse if you are curious. Ruby was curious. After all the stories she had heard about the mysterious, cold-hearted CEO, she wondered what he actually looked like. She made her way to the 30th floor, staying in the back hallway where the cleaning staff usually worked. The conference room doors were open, and Ruby could see dozens of people in business attire taking their seats. At the front of the room, someone was setting up a presentation. Ruby moved a little closer, trying to get a better look. That was when she saw him, standing at the podium. Reviewing notes with a serious expression was James, except everyone was calling him Mr. Blake. Jameson Blake. The CEO, Ruby, felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. Her James, the man she had been sharing her heart with for weeks, was actually Jameson Blake, the billionaire owner of the entire company. The man people spoke about in whispers, afraid of his cold reputation. He had lied to her. About everything? Ruby did not remember walking back to the elevator. She did not remember taking off her uniform or leaving her badge at the security desk. All she knew was that she needed to get out of that building immediately. Her phone buzzed as she reached the street. A text from an unknown number. "Ruby, please let me explain." She deleted it without responding and kept walking. Trying to make things right, Jameson stood in his office, staring at his phone. Ruby had not answered any of his calls or texts. Patricia had informed him that Ruby had quit, effective immediately, and left no forwarding information. "You look terrible, sir," Patricia said gently. "If you do not mind me saying—" "I ruined everything," Jameson said quietly. "I lied to her, and now she's gone." "Why did you lie?" Patricia asked. "That is not like you." "Because for the first time in my life, someone looked at me and saw just a person," Jameson explained. "Not a CEO, not a billionaire, just James. Someone worth talking to for who I am, not what I have. I was selfish and stupid, and now I have lost her." Patricia studied her boss with sympathetic eyes. In 15 years of working for him, she had never seen him like this. Vulnerable. Human. "Then you need to find her and tell her the truth," Patricia said. "All of it. No more lies, no more hiding. If she matters to you, fight for her." Jameson nodded. Patricia was right. But how could he find someone who clearly did not want to be found? The answer came 3 days later when Patricia walked into his office with a flyer. "The Community Arts Center is hosting a benefit concert this weekend. Local piano teachers are performing. I thought you might want to know that a Ruby Collins is listed as one of the performers." Jameson took the flyer, his heart beating faster. "Thank you, Patricia. Clear my schedule for Saturday night." "Already done, sir," she said with a knowing smile. The benefit concert at the Community Arts Center was nothing like the fancy venues Jameson usually attended. It was small and worn, with folding chairs and a stage that had seen better days. But it was filled with warmth and genuine appreciation for the arts. Jameson sat in the back row, watching as various performers took the stage. Children played violins with more enthusiasm than skill. A teenage boy sang a heartfelt but slightly off-key song. The audience clapped for everyone with equal enthusiasm. Then Ruby walked onto the stage. Jameson forgot to breathe. She wore a simple green dress and had pulled her hair back. She looked nervous as she sat at the old piano, her hands shaking slightly as they hovered over the keys. Then she started playing, and the entire room fell silent. It was the same melody she had played that night in the break room. But now it was fuller, richer, filled with emotion that made Jameson's chest ache. He could see tears forming in her eyes as she played, like the music was pulling something deep from inside her soul. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. Ruby stood and bowed, smiling through her tears. As people came up to congratulate her, Jameson made his way through the crowd. Face to face again, Ruby saw him before he reached her. Her smile faded, replaced by a guarded expression that broke Jameson's heart. "Ruby," he said quietly. "That was beautiful." "What are you doing here, Mr. Blake?" Ruby asked, emphasizing his real name. "I came to hear you play," Jameson said, "and to apologize." "You do not need to apologize," Ruby said, gathering her sheet music with shaking hands. "You are a billionaire. I am a janitor." "Well, former janitor, I understand why you lied. People like me do not fit into the world of people like you." "That is not true," Jameson said firmly, "and that is not why I lied." "Then why?" Ruby demanded, finally looking at him directly. "Why make me believe you were just James? Why let me embarrass myself, talking about my pathetic life, while you probably laughed at how naive I was?" "I never laughed at you," Jameson said, his voice rough with emotion. "Ruby, you were the first person in years to see me as just a person. Not a CEO, not a bank account, just me. I was selfish and afraid. Afraid that if you knew the truth, you would treat me differently, like everyone else does." "So you lied," Ruby said, tears streaming down her face now. "You made me trust you, care about you, and it was all based on a lie." "Not all of it," Jameson insisted. "Every conversation we had, every moment we shared that was real, My feelings for you are real, Ruby. More real than anything else in my life." Before Ruby could respond, an elderly woman approached them. She was small and elegant, with white hair and kind eyes that seemed familiar somehow. "Ruby Collins?" The woman said. "My goodness, is it really you?" Ruby turned, confused. "I am sorry. Do I know you?" "You would not remember me," the woman said with a gentle smile. "But I remember you. I am Mrs. Henderson. I taught piano at Greenfield Group Home about 20 years ago." Ruby's eyes widened. "Mrs. Henderson, you taught me that lullaby, the one I just played." "I did indeed," Mrs. Henderson said. "You had such talent even as a little girl. But there was another child who loved that song just as much as you did. A little boy with dark hair who would sit with you for hours, listening to you practice." Jameson felt something shift in his memory. A piano, a small girl with braids, the melody that haunted his dreams. "I do not remember any boy," Ruby said softly. "I remember the song, but not who I shared it with." "That is because he was only there for a short time before he was adopted," Mrs. Henderson explained. "His name was Jameson. Jameson Wright, before his new family changed his surname to Blake." The world seemed to stop. Ruby turned slowly to look at Jameson, her eyes wide with shock. "You were at Greenfield. You knew me?" Jameson's mind was racing, pieces falling into place. The orphanage, the music, the girl he had promised to remember, but whose face had faded with time. "Ruby," he whispered. "Red. We called you Red because of the ribbon you always wore in your hair." Ruby's hand flew to her mouth. "Jamie, you were Jamie, the boy who shared his cookies with me. The boy who promised he would come back." Mrs. Henderson smiled, tears in her eyes. "I thought you two might remember each other. That song was your special connection. Jameson learned it just so he could play it with you." "The pocket watch," Ruby said suddenly, digging in her purse. She pulled out the silver watch Jameson had left with her that night at the bus stop. "This was yours? From back then?" Jameson stared at the watch, memories flooding back. "The director of the orphanage gave it to me the day I was adopted. She said it belonged to my birth parents. I carried it every day, but I never knew why I could not let it go." "Because it was mine first," Ruby said quietly. "Before I came to Greenfield, I lived at another facility. They took it from me when I arrived, said it was too valuable for a child to keep. I cried for weeks." Mrs. Henderson nodded. "I remember. The director gave it to Jameson because he was so sad about leaving Ruby behind. She thought it might comfort him, not knowing it had been Ruby's all along." Ruby opened the watch, and for the first time, Jameson saw the engraving inside clearly. 2 sets of initials intertwined, RC and JW. "Ruby Collins and Jameson Wright," Jameson said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We were connected even then. Before we knew what that meant." The truth of the heart Ruby sank into a nearby chair, overwhelmed. "All this time I felt like I was searching for something I lost, a piece of myself I could not find." Jameson knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "I felt it too. From the moment I saw you at that bus stop, something in my soul recognized you. I just did not understand what it meant." "You left me your coat," Ruby said, tears flowing freely now. "And the watch. Our watch. I could not help myself," Jameson admitted. "Something inside me needed to protect you, even when I did not know why." Mrs. Henderson quietly excused herself, giving them privacy. Ruby and Jameson sat together in the empty concert hall, holding hands, letting the truth of their connection wash over them. "I am so sorry I lied to you," Jameson said. "If I could go back and do it differently, I would. But Ruby, everything I felt, everything I said, that was all true. You are the most genuine, kind, talented person I have ever met. You make me want to be better, to be worthy of you." "I was so hurt," Ruby admitted. "Not just because you lied about being the CEO, but because I thought our connection was not real, that you were just amusing yourself with the poor cleaning lady." "Never," Jameson said fiercely. "Ruby, I have spent my entire adult life building walls, keeping people at a distance. In 1 month, you broke through every single one of them. You made me remember what it feels like to be human. To laugh. To hope. To care about something more than profit margins and board meetings. Ruby studied his face, seeing the little boy she had known so long ago underneath the powerful man he had become. We lost so many years, and let's not waste any more, Jameson said. Ruby Collins, I am not asking you to forgive me right away. I know I need to earn your trust back, but I am asking for a chance. A real chance, with no more lies, no more hiding. Just you and me, figuring out what we can be together. Ruby was quiet for a long moment, and Jameson felt his heart pounding in his chest. Then, slowly, she smiled. It was a small, tentative smile, but it was real. No more lies? She asked. Never again, Jameson promised. I will tell you everything. About my life, my company, my past. Complete honesty. Always. And you will not treat me like I am fragile or need to be rescued, Ruby added. I can take care of myself, Jameson. I always have. I know you can, Jameson said. And that is one of the many reasons I love you. The words hung in the air between them. Ruby's eyes widened. You love me? I think I have loved you since we were children, Jameson admitted. I just needed to find you again to remember how, Ruby laughed. A genuine sound of joy that made Jameson's heart soar. You always were dramatic, Jamie, even when we were kids. Jameson asked hopefully, You will give me another chance? On one condition, Ruby said. You have to play that song with me again? Right now. Like we used to.